Hi, I'm Kevin Rich. I'm the Associate Chair and Director of Theater at CU Boulder, and I'm here to introduce a series of informal Zoom conversations about the Laramie Project, which is the first production of our school year. This year marks the 20th anniversary of the play, premiered 28 years ago at the Denver Center, and it has been no easy task to stage a play at this particular moment, but our production team has taken great care to keep our cast and crew safe. The actors are wearing masks throughout the performance. They're staged 12 feet apart from each other. And we're not performing for a live audience. We're recording it to be offered as streaming content on our CU Presents digital platform from October 30th to November 6th. When we chose this play over a year ago, it was our original intention to open on the weekend of October 12th, which is the 22nd anniversary of Matthew Shepard's death. But because we're recording the production, we needed a few extra weeks for editing. Having said that, we still wanted to do something on the 12th to mark that anniversary. So we had the idea to set up these Zoom conversations between some CU students involved in the production and some people who were connected to the Laramie Project from the beginning. The first conversation is between Jordan Lichtenheld, our dramaturg, and the Vice President of the Matthew Shepard Foundation, Jason Marsden. The second conversation is between our director, Elise Collins, Jedediah Schultz, who is a named character in the play and also an actor, director, and teacher in New York, and Kyle Lawrence, CU student and actor who is playing Jedediah Schultz. And the third conversation is between the original costume designer of the play, Mo Shell, Barb Pitts McAdams, original company member, actor, and dramaturg, and CU student and actor Gurkran Carr, who was playing Barb Pitts. It was a real treat for me to participate in these conversations. I hope you enjoy them as well. Thanks for watching, and make sure you come back to CU Presents between October 30th and November 6th to see the full production of the Laramie Project at CU Boulder. Thank you. Excellent. So I'm here to introduce Jordan Lichtenheld, a senior at CU Boulder, who is the dramaturg for our production of the Laramie Project, and as such has done a lot of research on the background of this show. And Jason Marsden, the vice president of the Matthew Shepard Foundation. Are you up in Laramie now? Or?
No, I'm right down here in Denver.
Oh, you're in Denver. Oh, excellent. Excellent. Well, thank you both for being here. I thought it would be great to just hear, sit in and listen in on a conversation between the two of you. And I know that Jordan has prepared some questions for Jason, so let's open the floor.
All right, yes. Thank you for meeting with us, Jason. It's really great to meet you and to speak with you today. I guess first just want to ask about like the Matthew Shepard Foundation and what you guys do, your mission, and what kinds of work you guys have done these past 20 years.
Sure. So the foundation is a gift of the universe. It came about because people insisted on it. When Matt was in the hospital and after he passed away, the Shepards received about 25,000 cards and letters in the mail. Condolences, drawings by children, letters from parents of other LGBTQ people, a letter from Coretta Scott King, just the most remarkable array of correspondence. And a lot of people, it was sort of like pennies in the wishing well. A lot of people put a $10 bill in those sympathy cards. And as a result, the Shepards ended up with about $140,000 of money that they didn't ask for and weren't entirely sure what they were supposed to do with. And they felt that because there was such extraordinary media attention, that they had a moment of the public's focus, and that they could use that to encourage parents to be accepting of their LGBTQ kids, to support hate crime legislation at the state and federal levels, and to just raise awareness generally about the community from the perspective of allies. And they felt, that this work would probably go on for a couple of years. These sorts of organizations have a lifespan. and the public eventually moves on to another story, and that was entirely their expectation. And of course, 22 years later, it's still growing and still fulfilling its mission. Um, what what I like to say about what we do is we encourage everyone to behave the way they already know they're supposed to, but for whatever reason they don't. To be loving, to embrace diversity, to rally for justice for minority identity communities. We're identified with the LGBTQ community, but um, our primary line of work is to help law enforcement, the public, institutions, workplaces, schools, to understand the corrosive nature of hatred, and for each of us to take individual action in our daily lives. Um, Washington, D.C. is not going to end hatred. Wall Street is not going to end hatred. Hollywood is not going to end hatred. They all have roles to play. But what will end hatred is if each and every one of us decides that we want it to end. And it could be done by Tuesday, free of charge, and it would make everybody's lives better. And we could all move on to other important issues of social justice. But we speak in workplaces and schools. We train law enforcement. We work through the media every chance we get to spread this message. It's a contagious message. If it's not incorrect to use the word contagious in the era of the pandemic, but it will take individual commitments from all of us to achieve.
Definitely, yes. Thank you for that. So I'd like to talk to you more about the relationship that the foundation has with the production itself of the Laramie Project. I think I saw on your website that you guys do help support various amounts of productions of both the Laramie Project and the epilogue Laramie Project 10 years later each year across the country.
Correct. We work in an average year. Of course, this is anything but an average year, but in an average year, we support 150 to 175 individual productions of one or both of the plays, and what that involves is everything from stock photography, the original footage from Channel 2 in Casper in 1998, connections to the individuals who are portrayed in the play. We've maintained robust communications with numerous characters who are, of course, actual people, and help connect casts to their counterparts in real life. We've helped produce some special productions of the play as educational or fundraising performances. And we stay in very close contact with Tectonic Theater Project, their professional staff, their creative personnel, and those relationships have been rich and extremely fulfilling. You really haven't lived until you've sat across the table having a martini with Moises Kaufman. I mean, and I hope you get the opportunity someday. He's a gentleman and a scholar, as the saying goes. It's been artistically very rewarding for the foundation to be involved in the world of theater. It brings us into contact with such talented people. I've seen the Laramie Project staged in, I think, just about every way you can imagine. I've sat through it 3 times in Spanish, which I don't speak, and yet somehow you can still follow what's going on. And it's been performed all over the world. It's been translated into dozens of languages. It's a touchstone in not only in LGBTQ history and in the world of oral history, because it very much is a work of historical merit, but also it's just tremendously fun, you know, to watch people get up and portray other people whom they do not know, other than through the written word, the spoken word, and the richness people bring. playing across gender, across race, across every category. There's really no limit to it. And so it's been intensely rewarding. For us as an organization, it allows people to have access to Matt's story, and in a shared and lived way, not just words on a page about this historical event, but how people felt, how they responded emotionally, and what it teaches us about what the world was like in 1998. Not so different than it is today.
Which is actually kind of unfortunate that we haven't changed too much.
It would be wonderful if we were a little bit better than we are right now. And of course, many things have changed. There's so much more visibility. There's so much more affirmation for LGBTQ people than there was at that time. But the core problem of hatred remains. And unfortunately, in the last few years, it seems to have accelerated.
Definitely. Well, this kind of ties into the last kind of question I wanted to ask you is how this work relates to the present day, and what kind of progress have we made since 1998 in terms of like legislation and just, I guess, like general like societal views, and what progress has yet to be made. I definitely agree with you that there still is a lot of hate, and that's just something that just needs to be changed.
Yeah. And I apologize in advance if the background noise is a little distracting out here in my backyard. My neighbors are having a lively conversation. It started the instant we tried to do this call, so apologies. You know, what I tell people is if you go looking for evidence that the world has improved in the last 22 years, you will find it. The passage of hate crime legislation at the federal level and in numerous states, employment equality, our new awakening to the realities of gender, to the intersections between sexuality, gender, race, ethnicity, disability, religion. We all sit at a nexus of all of those things, and we are all so much more aware. We can serve in the military now. Until recently, the hopefully repeal of transgender equality in the military will be reversed promptly. But kids are coming out at age 11. Some of the best anti-bullying programs in the world are spearheaded by 7th graders. If you can get the 3 coolest kids in the class to agree that hatred is wrong, everyone else will follow suit. And a lot of times I think our role as adults is to provide resources and get the hell out of the way. And so all of those things are happening. But if you want to go out in the world and look for evidence that things have not gotten better, you will find that as well. You will find hate crimes, you will find bullying, you will find discrimination, you will find parents who exclude their children, you'll find churches who reject their own members for what strikes me as petty reasons. You'll find bigotry of every stripe pretty much anywhere you look today. And so we are at a turning point, I think, as a culture, halfway in and halfway out. And we have some important choices to make about which direction we want to go. And I think that is the crucial issue in our politics today. I think it is the crucial issue in our social lives, in our institutions and workplaces and schools. And you don't get into this line of work if you're not an optimist, because it would be soul crushing otherwise. It's bad enough as it is. But I'm a big believer in ultimately people choosing to do the right thing. to paraphrase Winston Churchill, after they've exhausted every other option sometimes. So we exist to remind people that they aspire to be better, and that they have the power to do that. And they really don't need or depend on anyone to provide them those opportunities. They reside within ourselves.
That is such a refreshing perspective to hear, and I really appreciate you saying that. Yes.
You're welcome. And on a random Monday afternoon, I get pessimistic and grumpy and frustrated. I think we all do. But it gives you an opportunity to look in on yourself and say, why am I responding this way emotionally? What am I responding to, and what power do I have to do something about it? And I think that the well-reflected, well-considered life is our greatest gift to ourselves, if we're willing to put the energy and patience and time and work into it. It will surely reward you if you do so.
Definitely, definitely.
I agree with Jordan. It is, there have been moments, during the rehearsal process of this play where it's just like, man, what has changed? It's hard to be doing this play right now. There are days where we're like, man, and it is refreshing to hear your optimism and the reminder that we're.
Well, and I don't want to be Pollyanna. I get up every morning and I fill this up with coffee and I fill this up with trauma. And then I spend the rest of the day trying to unpack what's going on. And I mean, it is an astoundingly stupid time in human history. I mean, let's just be honest about it. But so was World War II. So was the Great Depression. So was the AIDS pandemic. All of our lives are squarely within the context of mass tragedy. And this is another one of those times. And my kind of rule of thumb about whether someone is really worth their salt is, would they be any use during wartime? Like, people are like, oh, I'm not going to wear a mask. You can't take my freedom away. I'm like, okay, well, my grandparents had to have coupons to buy tires. Like, they only got so much butter a month because there was a war, and it went on for 5 years. And I just look at the frivolity people are manifesting right now in the face of this great tragedy, and I wonder what use they would be in wartime. And if they can't put on a cloth mask for 15 minutes to go to the grocery store, I don't think they're going to be much use during World War II, and or during any other crisis that we have faced as a people. And so I like to challenge people to remember that they've got it pretty good. They're living indoors, they're eating hot food, and they are not on the battlefront shooting one another. Like, we've got to get some perspective as human beings about the gifts that we're presented with today and the responsibility it conveys to us to use those gifts to the advantage of humanity.
Yes, and.
You are good at your job.
Just another sermon from Reverend J.
Yeah. Well,
and I have the misfortune of meaning every word of it.
Yeah.
It'd be easier if I was a phony, because I could just spout this stuff and not feel anything about it. It is a tragedy born entirely by me that I believe all this stuff and can't resist the opportunity to share it with people. So,
well, we are grateful that you didn't resist, because this has been a fantastic conversation.
Happy to be a part of it. Congratulations on figuring out how to do this during this time, and all the work that went into it. I know it was considerable, and with many twists and turns. So, well played.
Thank you. Before we leave, can you share with viewers, if they're interested in learning more about the foundation, how they might do that?
Well, after this, if they're not interested in learning more about the foundation, I don't know what else I've got. So they should certainly visit MatthewShepard.org. We also have a very robust social media presence on Twitter, Matt Shepard FDN. Matthew Shepard Foundation on Facebook has a couple 100,000 fans. I think we're even on Instagram, but I'm almost 50, so I don't really know much about Instagram. I'm pretty confident we're on there though. You know, drop me a line, Jason at MatthewShepard.org. I'm pretty easy to find, and I'd be delighted to talk to anybody who'd like more detailed information.
Excellent.
Thank you so much for speaking with us today.
You're most welcome. Thank you for putting on this play. It's a gift to us that you're doing this.
Thank you.
Be good. Be good to yourselves. Do good work. I'll stop talking now.
Hello all. So today we have some wonderful guests. We have the director of our CU production of the Laramie Project, Elise Collins. We have Jedediah Schultz, who is a named character in the production of the Laramie Project, and who is now the head of acting at Playwrights Horizons in New York. And we have Kyle Lawrence, a student at CU, who is playing Jedediah Schultz. So I'm really looking forward to hearing this conversation. I know, Elise, you have a couple of questions that might get us started about the Laramie Project.
Sure. My first question is, how would you say that your relationship with the play has changed over the last 20 years?
Wow, that's a very large question.
Dive right in.
I can start anywhere with it if you'd like.
No.
Or, yeah.
That's a big question. Because it's been a wild ride for me personally in regards to my relationship with the play. I think that's in large measure because of my sort of continued involvement in the theatrical world in a variety of different ways. So I feel like my relationship with the play is probably maybe a little different from some of the other characters, who aren't inside of the theatrical world. So I've always had a love and appreciation for Tectonic as a theater company, for the play as a piece of art, and but personally, it's been a sort of grappling. At times, I went through a phase where I felt like Kevin might appreciate this, where I felt like I was defined as a person in part by my character in the Laramie Project, and I wanted to sort of figure out how I established myself as an artist, separate from the Laramie Project. And as I've matured, I've gotten better about keeping those boundaries and those lines clear. But yeah, so that's just a personal note. In regards to sort of Laramie, I was just there visiting my family. The one upside to online teaching is that you can do it from anywhere. And so I went back to Wyoming and went elk hunting with my father, where I was basically a glorified Sherpa. But, my whole family is still in Laramie. And so I've continued to have a sort of tether and personal relationship with the town and with the community from afar. And so it's been both beautiful, but also frustrating to see the sort of slow progress that Laramie has made from where the play began and to where we all are now. So yeah, I think it's interesting. I think there's not too many plays that still sort of resonate 20 years later. And I feel, me personally, and I encounter people where frequently where the play still resonates in this kind of profound way still. And I think that's pretty unusual for a piece of art to still carry with it that kind of vibration. I don't know if that answered your question.
And I have to jump in here and say that I was so conflicted. So I know Jedediah, and I was conflicted about asking, because I'm like, I bet this guy gets invited for conversations like this all the time. But I'm pretty new to Colorado, and knowing, I mean, doing this play here, I think is really powerful for a lot of people who are right down the street from Laramie. And knowing that you're from Laramie, I was like, oh, I'm just going to ask, because it is interesting to have your perspective as someone, you know, from that town. And yeah, and it's just not that often that you get to eavesdrop on a conversation between someone who is playing someone else, you know.
Well, hey, Kevin, I'm taking great comfort in the fact of what you're articulating, because I think that you all probably have a little bit more sensitive awareness to what Laramie is like, what the people of Wyoming are like, where I feel I've seen many productions of this, and the range of sort of archetypes and stereotypes that become attached to the citizens of Wyoming is unsettling and disturbing.
Wow.
At best. Yeah. So I feel I take comfort knowing that you're all having like an actual understanding of that we're human beings. And
You got it.
yeah, and that we're not like these. Yeah, it's wild. Yeah.
It's also really wild to be doing this play right now. I mean, we'd been talking about the 20th anniversary of this play in 2020 for a number of years. But I don't think anyone could have imagined how powerful it would be it would be to be doing this play right now. And I was just in attendance at their designer run and could feel it in the room, you know. It's like the, you know, just as you said, the relevance of the play is sometimes frustrating. Certain elements of it that we're still having these conversations, you know, 20 years later, is, I think, can feel exhausting, especially when you're doing a play, rehearsing a play at night after a day full of classes, right? And so, yeah, Kyle, could you speak to that a little bit about what it's been like to be working on this play now?
It's been, yeah, absolutely. It's been very just surreal, just with seeing how much can be still applied and talked about and opening dialogues with 20 years later. And like you were saying, Kevin, there's just been this power in the rehearsal space that it's hard to articulate and put into words, but it just feels so right that we are doing this show and doing it now. And I feel so lucky to be a part of it. So, yeah.
Seconded. I think for me, the surreal part was when we were doing auditions and like they fill out their ages on the forms. We have a lot of people who either were born 20 years ago or were like less than, just like barely. And it's strange to think about this new generation of people continuing to tell this story. And I agree that few plays seem to have this cultural resonance and power 20 years later, but I keep asking myself, like, is that a good thing that we can connect it so much to what's happening today? And I appreciate the sharing of humanity and multiple different perspectives on an idea, especially when everything feels so polarized right now, of when I can't see someone else's perspective. And it's like, this play asks you to. And I think that's really powerful. And I think it addresses some very pertinent issues today. But there's always that little voice inside of me of like, why are we doing this? I wish that this play could be something that we look back on as more historical theater rather than it still feels like it has pressing cultural relevance. And that was something I struggled with when I submitted it, but it's a very worthwhile and valuable story to tell. So I think we need to tell it.
Yeah, Elise, I think you're alluding to one of the real strengths of Tectonic as a theater company, which is just personally, I feel like they didn't. Well, actually, I'll start here. They were very generous with me as a theater artist, so they kind of invited me into some of the early rehearsal processes and the sort of formulation. They workshopped the play in Denver, actually, initially. And so I would drive down from Wyoming and sit in on rehearsals. And the early drafts of the play, to me, felt like they were sort of being synthesized around some sort of agenda. And I think that they found their way to not doing that, to a simple sort of questioning of individuals from this small town and community. And I think that's just so, it's just so rare in art making these days, to not feel like people are trying to make you feel a certain sort of way, where it feels to me the play is like a reflection of the complex makeup of a Western conservative town grappling with its own culpability in this tragedy.
Yeah, I remember in initial conversations with Kevin, I was appreciating how the play didn't judge the characters and just let them and their actions and their words stand on their own and let the audience make those determinations themselves. And he pointed out to me that I'm a huge fan of Shakespeare, that Shakespeare does the exact same thing. And that's probably why I was drawn to the plays, because you don't feel like there's an agenda. It's just a presentation of people and their words. And I really love that.
Yeah. Strangely, you're making me think of Angels in America, actually, which is like a similar sort of like, you know, play that has sort of stood the test of time. And you're making me think of the character of Roy Cohn, which is like this, personally, I think a despicable human, but Kushner finds ways to make him incredibly charismatic and captivating and sort of like, yeah, just see the complexity of this, of the whole of this person. And yeah, we're so polarized that we're not always able to sort of unearth that far.
Out of curiosity for you, Kyle, how has it been trying to portray characters that have actually said these things with, I don't want to say entirely like without judgment, but like trying to present a relatively objective view? How has that process been?
Because just to jump in there, Kyle is playing a variety of characters.
Yes, we're trying to do the original doubling, or not doubling, quadrupling,
There are 13 tracks. That's all I know for me.
And my condolences.
No, it's fine. But yeah, it's definitely been it's been a challenge trying to come to a character without judgment, especially when I know that, oh, Aaron McKinney and Russell Henderson were actual people. These were things that they actually said. So I think the big thing was finding that separation, and Elise has done an amazing job with helping facilitate this kind of safe environment for creation and art. And being able to create that separation and then look at that character from a more objective standpoint has been challenging, but definitely possible because of the environment that Elise has created.
Thanks. We've spent a lot of work discussing de-rolling just to make sure that, like, you know, characters don't rub off on you when you leave the room. So many thanks and kudos to Amanda Rose for doing a workshop on that with us. Really appreciate that.
This word character I find compelling, and it's making me think about your kind of first question. It's this play has strangely impacted the ways in which I teach theater and acting, where I'm somewhat reluctant to even use this word character now, because I think there's a strange sort of conscious or unconscious siloing of them, or me, right? And so it's kind of led me down this path of you know, our jobs as performers is to claim someone else's story as our own, whether that is Stanley Kowalski or whether that's Matt Galloway or you know, any of the number of people in Laramie. It's very interesting to me, like actors seem to sort of approach this play differently than they do other plays, right? Because they feel this sort of like pressure, I guess, of playing real people. But I don't think the approach should be any different at all. I think it should be exactly the same, and we should approach Ophelia with the same exact way that we approach Aaron McKinney. That these are just different humans, and they have a different sort of story that we need to claim. So it's interesting, like yeah, so much of my curriculum and training is a direct sort of in relationship to the experience of like trusting someone like Kyle with my story, right? That's a profound, I feel, responsibility. And I think the only way that you can honor that, no pressure, Kyle, but is to bring all of who you are in service of claiming somebody else's story. Yeah. And the hat is a great start, Kyle. The hat is a wonderful place to start. We didn't plan this, just so you all know.
Completely accidental.
I only realized it at the very start of the Zoom call, and I was just like, what?
You were like, good job, Elise, good casting. Well, that is a profound thing to say, Jedediah. And you anticipated my question just about how that has informed you as a theater artist, you know, and just this notion of documentary theater and what it is to capture a person at a certain moment in time. I remember you telling me years ago something about having to play you later, didn't you? We're almost out of time, but could you say a little bit about that? Because I remember you saying that was just such an interesting experience, you know, to play a version of yourself. Can you say more about that?
Yeah, that's well said, Kevin. Because, you know, I would assume most humans wouldn't want the 19-year-old version of themselves permanently captured. And that's a very different version of who I am 20 years later, you know. But even at the time when I was playing, I did 2 different productions. And it was, I think I was like 21 and maybe 22. Well, there's quite a bit of growth that happens during those years, and so it was like playing a character of sorts, a different version of myself. And you know, the play stirs up a lot of things for me personally, of like things I like regret and yeah, and a lot of like family drama and turmoil. And so like revisiting those things was very sort of, yeah, tricky. But it was fun. It was interesting. It was empowering as an actor to feel like I remember one of the directors saying like, hey, could you maybe go over here on this line? And I think it's the one time where an actor could literally say, I don't think I would do that. I don't think my character would do that. Yeah. So, yes.
Because I didn't.
Because I don't want to do that. Yes. Where I'm usually very adverse to that kind of mentality. Yeah.
That's amazing. I see that we're just about out of time. Are there any final thoughts, reflections, questions we didn't get to? This is the conversation that could go on.
Oh yeah.
I have a question, Kyle. How are you feeling about claiming these real people's stories? Like, how are you processing that?
It's so odd, just with knowing that everyone I'm playing is very much real. And since it's so close to home for me, like the debut of Laramie Project was in the same theater where I took all of my high school acting classes through the Denver Center. So I'm just like, this is absolutely mind-blowing and so surreal. But it's been such a great opportunity to grow, just as an actor, and having this different style of show to participate in has been super beneficial. So I'm a little nervous and a little excited doing this.
Kyle, you're sorry to continue this, Kevin, but Kyle, you're making me think of like a couple different things. One is the sort of like the sacred nature of these theatrical spaces, right? Of the ways in which that singular space can manifest totally different realities. And I had a strange experience with the Laramie Project specifically, which Tectonic, because they're a company of principles and values, promised Laramie that after it did its New York run, they would return and present the show to the community, which I think is like a beautiful sentiment, saying that like we're not going to, whatever we create, we will stand by enough to like actually share it with you. And so after it had its New York run, it came and it played a week in Laramie, and the play was it was staged on the University of Wyoming's main stage theater, where we had done Angels in America. And so there was this surreal sort of meta-theatrical moment where Andy Paris, he kind of fudged one of the lines where he said, on our final trip to Laramie, I had the privilege of seeing Jedediah Schultz perform the role of Pryor on this stage. And I was sitting in the audience watching him say that. And it was just like this spiraling of like the immense power that those spaces can wield and hold. And it's just kind of magical. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I appreciate that.
That's so wild. Oh my gosh.
Wow.
I'm glad we had time for that last question. That is a good story. Life and art, man.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all for your time. And Jedediah will keep you posted on how the show is going.
Yes, I would love to hear. I would love to hear updates. And if anything bubbles up for you all, I make myself available, Kyle. And, you know, now maybe you can add a little nasality to your voice.
Yeah. Is this cheating? It's kind of like cheating. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much.
So today I'm very excited to introduce Mo Shell, the original costume designer of the Laramie Project.
Hi.
Hi. And we have Barb Pitts McAdams, original company member of the Laramie Project as actor and dramaturg and co-author of Tectonic's devising book, Moment Work. Thank you for being here, Barb. And Gurkaran Carr, a CU student who is playing original company member Barbara Pitts, among other roles.
Hello.
Thank you all for being here to have a conversation about this play, about your involvement in this play over the years. Hopefully we can touch on its relevance 20 years later. I know that Gurkaran, you have prepared some questions, so I thought we might start there.
Of course. Thank you. My first question that I have is, towards the end of the play, there's a line, and it's from Father Roger Schmidt, and it says, "And I will speak with you. I will trust that if you write a play of this, that you say it right. You need to do your best to say it correct." And what does that mean to you? And do you think that the Laramie Project fulfilled that wish that Father Roger Schmidt had?
You have thoughts about that, Mo?
I do. It's the line that I love in the play, and I'm, as to whether we've said it correct, I believe that we have. So, and also he's a wonderful character. Says, so yeah, I do feel like we said it correct, and we're still saying it, and the world is still saying it. So.
Yeah, in the I do a lot of devising with college students and high school students. And, one of the questions I ask them is, how does this piece we're making end? Does it end with a question? Do you leave with a question, or do you leave with a call to action? And I think one of the reasons perhaps the play continues to resonate, and especially resonate with young people, is I feel like the call to action is something we can all do. We can walk out of the theater and do it immediately. We cannot use negative words against ourselves, negative self-talk, and we can be aware of how words lead to other forms of violence. And I think maybe now more than ever, we need that reminder when the country feels so polarized.
Absolutely. And I think that this play really, really touched my heart. And I think that this play makes more sense than anything, because as crazy as this year has been, I think with everything that's been going on with the Black Lives Matter movement and the unfortunate incident that happened to Matthew Shepard, I think I truly understood what hate looks like, but also the overcoming of hate and the ability for community to come together and spread acceptance and love more than anything. I think it's incredibly beautiful that not only a company did this in such an artistic and creative form, but and I was doing some research last night and seeing some old clips of different news broadcasts and different interviews and stuff, and I saw the parade that occurred, and the 500 people that marched for Matthew Shepard, and you can see a lot of those same patterns happen concurrently right now with the Black Lives Matter movement. And I think it's incredibly beautiful. And like you said, Ms. McAdams, the call for action. And I think that's really apparent nowadays. So
yeah, I think sometimes things can seem so huge. You just want to just watch TikTok videos all day. But if you break it down into, okay, in this moment, am I moving toward love and justice, or am I moving away from it? In every moment we're moving away or toward the world that we want to be in. And sometimes you do need to just take a break and self-care and watch TikTok videos or whatever. Like we have to take care of ourselves. I'm working on another piece called Here Too. You guys can look it up on here2project.com. And it's interviews with youth activists. And one of them says, the moms from Moms Demand Action keep reminding me it's a relay race. And when I get tired, I can pass the baton. But we can't all pass the baton. We have to make sure someone's holding it before we drop out, so, and that can look like anything from one moment to the next. Just being kind to someone next to you. Another one of my activists said, sometimes covert resistance is enough. If you're LGBTQIA and you're visible, sometimes that is a form of covert resistance that makes it more possible for someone else to feel safe. So, there's lots of different ways we can say it correct.
Exactly. I completely agree with you on that. And going off of that, I think what you said about handing off the baton, change, and I think that change happens, like you said, one step at a time, one baton at a time. It's important for us to take care of ourselves individually in order for us to slowly progress as a society.
Yeah, and I think there are these lightning rod moments, like what happened to Matthew Shepard was a real turning point, a tipping point in our culture, as was the March for Our Lives and the death of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and like finding the way to move forward in these people's names and continue to try to seek justice, a just country, a just world.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So are you, I know you're playing my track. Are you also playing Zubaida Ullah?
I am playing Zubaida. Yeah, I'm really excited about her character. She has a really fun monologue. I've been working hard on, I think it's in the second act at the candle vigil. Yeah, I've been working pretty hard on that. Yeah, I play multiple characters. It's been a really big challenge because I haven't done, this is my first production, like a college production. So, and to play these characters of such magnitude, I feel such a big responsibility to play them well and to play them correctly. But it can, at times, it can be really emotionally draining because I want to do the best that I can, and I want to make people like you proud and Matthew Shepard proud. And yeah, so yeah, it's been quite a journey, but very fulfilling, and I've learned so much, and I've worked. The cast is so fantastic, and the director Elise, she is amazing. So yeah, I'm
Yes,
really
I would make one caution to the crowd, to the the cast that is doing the show. Don't make these people too precious. You know, like she says some amazing things, but you know, like I remember Zubaida was being questioned by someone who was out with us one night who was like, how come you wear your headscarf sometimes but not other times? And this person was Arab American and really connecting to his Muslim identity. And she just cut him off like a talk to the hand moment and went, look, I am down with God and God is down with me and it's cool. Right? So, you know, like that's where she's coming from, you know? So, and I think a lot of these characters, they're struggling to figure something out. They're not feeling sad. They're not like, don't play the ending of the, you know, don't play the tragedy of this play. Play the, you know, like I'm trying to grapple with this and I'm trying to figure it out, right? Like I think that's part of why the play works, is we caught people at a moment where they really wanted to be heard and they wanted to figure out how they felt about where they found themselves.
I completely agree with you on that. One of my cast members, Denise, he was like, you need to just be the best version of yourself that you can be on stage. And there's always, every single performance, every single actor that plays a certain character, they always have their little individuality when they're playing a character. So that's some great advice. So thank you.
This is great stuff. Mo, I know you had a question that I would love for you to introduce to the conversation.
Yeah, it's actually pretty much for all of you, because I've been, I came to BARD fairly soon after the Laramie Project was done in Denver, I mean, and then New York and then the other places. But I know that Barb has been personally involved with Tectonic, and you guys are putting on this play after it's been done in so many different places. And I'm wondering how the reactions to the play, and Barb, if you feel, how you feel it has grown to be different or the same with the world around it becoming different, and what today it offers an audience. That's it.
I was just talking to a group last night, actually, on on a Zoom call. They're actually doing the sequel play, Laramie 10 Years Later. And in that play, Romaine, friend of Matthew Shepard, says, there's Matt, who was my friend, and there's Matthew Shepard. And I do feel, in this group last night was saying, it's like he's become metaphor, or the whole play has become a metaphor. Whereas when we premiered it at the Denver Center in the year 2000, you know, producers were worried, like, oh, we better rush this into production because people will forget about that news event. People will forget about who Matthew Shepard was. And so now I'm speaking with, you know, people your age, Gurkaran, who, you know, they learn about Matthew Shepard through doing the play, and they learn about the Matthew Shepard Foundation and all and the fact that our hate crimes bill is now named for Matthew Shepard and James Elbert Jr. And so, you know, it's a real teachable moment. And I mean, when I work with high school students who are doing the play, or college students, I can just feel how intensely passionate people are about communicating this story. So it has really come to be kind of a conduit or a vehicle for like kind of coalescing and funneling a bunch of chaotic noise and feelings we have into a story that kind of helps us focus some of these feelings and brings us together as a community when we do it. So one of my goals when I created the Here Too project was, how can I create something similar but give students the chance to be generative? So I think one of the things that I lament about the play is that you can't go into some kind of database and look at everything Jedediah Schultz said or everything Father Roger said, because I did a lot of the transcribing. So I have all those beautiful outtakes kind of in my memory. So with the Here Too project, every interview is open sourced, and every school can go in and say, well, let's do some interviewing around a local event that we're still grappling with and thread it into a regional, national storyline. So that's kind of, you know, Mo, you were asking, like, what does this kind of theater mean today? And I think we have to be a little bit more sophisticated about it today. You know, like the fact that we put people's real names in the play didn't occur to us. Like, we all had AOL accounts at the time, you know? So it didn't occur to us that for all time, the rest of their lives, the characters in the Laramie Project would be getting emails and Facebook messengers saying, hey, I'm playing you in the Laramie Project. What do you like? You know? So we were just very naive about the process. And I feel like now when you do this kind of work, for me, I want to be much more co-intentional with my interviewees, make sure that they are seeing the progress as it's happening, and open sourcing so anyone could look back and see everything that person thought, not just the, you know, of the hours and hours and hours, hundreds of hours of interview material we've made the Laramie Project. So, you know, there's so much more Father Roger that you would love to hear. So I guess that's my answer, that I just feel like it is now not about that specific crime as much as it is about who are we as a country. How are we going to stop things like this from happening? How can I walk out of the theater tonight? And I really felt like the first time we shared material from the Laramie Project, just in a reading, and I looked out at the audience and I was like, oh my God, I think I just made theater for the first time, because I really felt, I could see it on people's faces, the purging of pity and fear, you know, to use that sort of catharsis definition. I felt people having catharsis, and I feel like the play still does that for people.
That's good.
Mo, when you came back 2013, when we remounted both plays at Brooklyn Academy of Music at BAM in Brooklyn, and Mo came from Bard and kind of re-costumed the thing for a much bigger theater for a different moment. Yeah. And, you know, one of our, like, we felt kind of sheepish about it. Here we are 20 years later, like trotting out this, it wasn't 20, it was like 13 years later. Do we just remount what we did, like a little museum piece, or does it shift at all? So, and one of the things I would share about what Mo did on the piece with moment work, we're trying to bring in all the elements of the stage when we're in the room devising, figuring out how is the play going to look and move and feel as we're figuring out what is the content going to be. Like, how are we going to represent the fence? How are we going to change 8 people into an entire town? Like, and the costumes were a really big part of that. And so Mo was in almost all of our rehearsals, and we tried to get our other designers in as much as possible, but Mo was really like in the room with us, which had its, I'm sure, challenges as a designer. But what was that like remounting it for you as a designer?
It was a challenge to be in the rehearsal room. The biggest challenge to design this show was that the entire cast knew these people. It was like, you know, Lady Macbeth's mother saying, "Hey, dress her like that. I know. Oh no, she would never wear that." You know, it was just like you had, and then you had to have one thing, like Jedediah's hat. That you knew he was Jedediah when he went here, or just everything had to be so concentrated with the character. And so coming back to it was kind of interesting, because you have, in the 10 years later when we did that in Boston, it was amazing because I had the internet. Like, it was just like, I can go find pictures of these people. And I didn't really have that when we did the show first. You know, people would say, "Oh, I loved him. He was great. He wore a plaid shirt." You know, and it was like, well, like, the entire show was plaid shirts. So that was the challenge then. But the second time around and the third time around, you don't want to change it, because you want the actor, the company member, to, you all, I think, began to identify with the pieces of the character that were costumed and important to the character and to the actor. So, you know, like that shearling coat, the shearling coat, you know, everything.
And, Rob Debris wore this big shearling coat, and partly he wore that because Greg had too many quick changes.
Yes,
so
he had like
he
4
needed
costumes
something so big that it could hide the character he had just been. And Rob Debris is a big man, and so Mo found this coat that gave Greg all this kind of presence and bulk.
Yeah, and it was, you know, it was those things that were so important. And there were a few things I changed because because we now had more information and more availability. But I really I wanted to leave it alone because I think it worked the first time. I think the changes worked. They were they were very fluid and unnoticed, which was great. I mean, the best thing you can be as a costume designer with a show like this is invisible, right? Because I didn't need to make anybody know I was there. I just needed to make the audience understand these people and the story. So did that answer the question?
Yeah.
This is such great stuff. I'm looking at our time, and I want to respect your time. Gurkhan, did you have any final burning question to take us home? I know you said you had a few.
I did. I have one more. I have a couple more, but I will.
We can just keep on talking. These have been great.
I love this conversation. My question is, the writing in the Laramie Project is so well written. I think that it's really cool that Matthew Shepard's story was written in multiple perspectives, from his friends' perspectives, from his adversaries, and his father's speech towards the end that was during the trial. I think that it's so cool that those multiple perspectives sort of tied into this one great message. So when you were conducting those interviews, and I know you did like over 200, which was very cool, what was your intention when conducting those interviews? Did you have a set goal in mind when you were meeting with these individuals?
You just said so many great things, and I agree. You know, the writing, you know, really the editing, and really keeping our ears open for what we would call the poetry of the vernacular. Like when Rob Dupree says about learning about the gay community, then it hit me, this is America. You don't have the right to feel that fear. You know, and we all know what he meant, and you wouldn't want to go back and interview him and say, could you say that again, but say it appropriately? You know, like there was something about him grappling with the idea that you shouldn't be afraid to walk down the street if you're American, no matter who you are, right? Was what he was trying to say. But saying it so poetically in a way. And there's so many instances of that in the play. Sometimes to humorous effect, sometimes to really deep effect, like, you know, Dennis Shepard's speech in invoking the stars and, you know, the Wyoming, you know, environment as a friend to Matthew. So I think when we would first approach someone about an interview, there's a lot of sort of building trust and rapport and just letting those little tape recorder cassette tapes fill up, turn them over, fill up again. And then as we continue to work, one of the things that we do is we map out through lines. So what was the town of Laramie's through line? What is Matthew's through line? When did the town know what? And then we start to see like who's emerging as a punctual character who just has like one thing to say, like maybe Sherry Johnson, the state trooper's wife. You know, there's one place for her. We don't follow up with her again in the play. And then there are people who start to emerge as our pivotal characters, our heroes, like Jedediah Schultz Romaine, Father Roger, Jonas Slonaker. I'm sure I'm leaving out a few. Rulon Stacy, you know, like there are people, Marge and Reggie, of course, that we want to track through the play. So then when you go back, then you ask them things you didn't think of originally, like when the death penalty is on the table for Aaron McKinney, then you want to go back and ask everyone, including Zubaida Ullah, what's your take on the death penalty? How do you feel about that? So it's sort of, we had the luxury in a sense because we couldn't finish the play until Aaron McKinney's trial was concluded. So that gave us over a year to go back to Laramie 6 times and to keep, you know, like have a workshop, put it away for a while, have another workshop, add to the structure of it. When we got to Denver, we really didn't have an Act 3. So if you notice the structure of the Laramie Project, Act 1 is I Love Laramie, it's very expansive, and then they find Matthew Shepard. And then Act 2 is the 4 days, boom, boom, boom. You know, it was Monday morning, it was Tuesday, it was Thursday, it was Friday. And the media is controlling the pace of Act 2. And then Act 3, we had to cover about a year's worth of events, Matthew Shepard's funeral, you know, the trial of Aaron McKinney. And we had to kind of say goodbye and wrap up with all of the people we'd come to love, right? So we had to find a form for that. So that's why Act 3 feels much more like an impression or an expressionistic kind of piece of work. So I think, you know, people think of Tectonic, they think, oh, they're a theater for social change because of the Laramie Project and Gross Indecency and other plays that we've done with social justice, kind of social change themes. But really, when you think of Tectonic, you know, what comes to mind? Probably tectonic plates, architecture. So really, the theater company was founded to look at new form, like what can theater do as a form? The science and art of shifting and shapes and forms. So one of the reasons I think the play really endures is that, you know, Moises and the main writers of the play, Lee Fondakowski, Greg Parati, Steve Belber, Andy Paris, and our dramaturg, Steve Wong, primarily, just really minute attention to detail and how putting one piece of text against another piece of text might change the meaning of the first text, and just trying to be, and then the rest of us barking at them like with Mo with the costumes, like, my character would never wear that. Also, you can't have my character say that if you don't also have them say this other thing. You know, like really, really fighting to make sure the people in the play are fairly represented.
Good stuff. I have to be thankful for technology during this time.
Just wind me up and then it just starts to kind of unspool out, so.
Well, I just feel really lucky that we were able to bring these plates into the same screen and have this conversation.
Just on a personal note, Mo and I were roommates at that time. We shared a house together. And we had gone on a vacation to Mexico, and it was New Year's Eve, and they bumped all the childless passengers up to first class. So we were like, hey, New Year's Eve, we're in first class. And this was 1999. And we heard someone behind us say, well, they say how you spend your New Year's Eve is how you'll spend your year. And I think it was days later, we both got invited to work on this project, which, you know, has just been the most profound and meaningful thing that, you know, we could have ever been a part of. So I always think back good to see my old pal Mo and remember our origin story into the Laramie Project.
Yep.
Well, that is a great place to put a pause. I say a pause because I hope we all keep talking. So thank you so much for your time.
With the production.
Yeah, we'll let you know how it goes.
Yeah, I want to see it. I want to see how this works over Zoom with masks and social distance. And
we will definitely share it with you.
okay, cool.
Thanks, everyone.
Oh, we'll have a viewing